Whenever I'm live streaming, I'm bound to get a couple handful of questions that are all pretty much the same thing. They're coming from people that maybe played Duel Links or haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh in a long time, and they ask me, what's the best way to play Yu-Gi-Oh online? What's the best simulator? And unfortunately, I have to give the same vague answer every single time, wherein I basically say every single one of them has huge glaring problems, and that's problems, not just one problem. It's multiple problems that all these online simulators have, and you pretty much just have to choose the one that you dislike the least or the one that you can look past the issues of the most. And in today's video, I want to talk about all of the major online simulators as well as some of the ways that they could improve, and if there are even overarching problems as to why all of these things suck in one way or another. Now, I do want to mention, as I kind of said at the beginning here, this isn't a Duel Links analysis. Duel Links is not a simulator. It's not a simulation of the TCG at all. For all intents and purposes, Duel Links is an entirely different entity from the TCG. Yes, there are the same cards in Duel Links as the TCG, but the TCG has 7,000 cards and Duel Links has nowhere near that amount, as well as the fact that Duel Links is not free to play and has different monster zones, and there aren't any, well, there's about to be synchro monsters, but there's no exceed monsters, pendulum monsters, link monsters. It is very different from the actual physical card game, so calling Duel Links a simulation is a lot of a stretch because it just doesn't really fit into the same skills that you would want to have if you were practicing the TCG. Because if someone played Duel Links to see if they wanted to play the TCG, they might be very disappointed when they went to a TCG tournament and found out the games are extremely different. And some of the issues with these online simulators, I'm not sure if they're actually fixable, but they all do have fairly big issues, and I'm going to talk about them in today's video. So first off, we have Dueling Book, which is the successor, sort of spiritual successor to Dueling Network. And I want you to know, I've played pretty much all of these dueling platforms for hundreds of hours over the past like 5 years. I can remember when Dueling Network first came out, even before they had judges and admins on there, and instead of that sort of judge call system, you use the ASS system, the anti-sportsmanship, I don't even know, anti-sportsmanship something. Anyway, it's called the ASS, and that was a way that you just like gave your opponent the win, but you lowered their ranking. That's kind of how Dueling Network worked before there was Call of Judge, which was hilariously bad and really broken, because then people would just, no matter if they were going to win or lose, they would just give your opponent a minus rating, which really sucked. But I've been playing online Yu-Gi-Oh simulations for a long time, and I've seen their ups and I've seen their downs. I would say that just objectively, the time that the simulators were in their prime was when Dueling Network was in its prime, and Dueling Network was a huge platform. Pretty much everyone was on it, and one of the main reasons that Dueling Network, in my opinion, worked better than Dueling Book isn't really Dueling Book's fault. It's just that Dueling Book isn't as big. Dueling Network was way bigger, but there are multiple times when I've been on Dueling Book and there hasn't been a single judge, which means if your opponent just decides to walk away from the computer, you are just stuck there, and you can quit, sure, but you'll lose rating, you'll get the loss, and that matters to a lot of people. So there are tons of cases. I mean, on Facebook every single day I'm seeing someone posting, hey, I've been in a judge call for 20 minutes, there's no judges online, if anyone can come online, that would be great. And unfortunately, in most of those scenarios, that doesn't happen. No one actually shows up, and you're forced to give your opponent, who's sort of just BMing you and giving, just not playing very well and is just leaving, or in the worst case scenario, someone that just like cheated actively against you. There's nothing you can do except admit defeat or try to out-waste their time, but in a lot of cases, you can't really do that because they're just trying to troll. So that's one of the biggest issues with Dueling Book, is that there aren't always judges online. I think probably the bigger issue with Dueling Book is that it constantly crashes or lags, and also just even if the thing is fully functioning, and this was kind of one of the problems with Dueling Network as well, man, the games take forever. I mean, they really take a long time, and it's not Dueling Book's fault, it's not Dueling Network's fault that that's how those simulations work, because it is honestly for everything, like Dueling Book is the closest to playing real life Yu-Gi-Oh, and I know a lot of people do not like that it's manual, but most people that play on there, including myself, really do enjoy that it is a manual simulator, because when I get to YGOPro, you'll find that one of the issues with YGOPro is that it's not a manual simulator, and what that means is that you're just basically clicking the cards that are highlighted and just having them do whatever they do. You never forget a SCARM search on YGOPro because the game is constantly reminding you, but when you go to a real tournament, there's no YGOPro AI to remind you to search for SCARM. You just kind of have to remember it. that's one thing that Dueling Book does a lot better. It gives you a much closer to real life experience, and also the Dueling Book deck builder is fantastic, but the game is extremely slow. Single games can take 30 minutes, which is just insane, and that's without any ruling disagreements, which, like I just mentioned, a lot of times you'll just have to leave if there's a ruling disagreement. Sometimes your opponent will believe you if you provide enough resources, but if it's something that they've had that judged that way, like in the past at a local tournament, they're just never going to believe you, and you're stuck giving them a win. So Dueling Book is probably the closest to real life experience, but it does have a lot of downsides. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, that's what I've currently been playing on a lot, and it does have the issue, like I just talked about, where whenever a card's highlighted, you can just click it, and honestly, you can win most of the time. If you throw someone that's never played Yu-Gi-Oh! Into Dueling Book and Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, I would argue that on Dueling Book, they will never be able to win. They'll probably cheat 1,000 times, but at least on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, they will never cheat, and they might even get a couple wins, which to some people, you might be saying, well, that's a good thing, but the problem is, if we're talking about simulations that are helping you get better at the game to actually go to tournaments, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro isn't going to help you, and a lot of the times, the competition on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro simply isn't good enough, and one of the issues is there's like 1,000 versions of Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. Just off the top of my head, there's Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Piercy, which is what I'm currently using. There's Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro 2, there's Dev Pro, there's Yu-Gi-Oh! Dawn of a New Era. All these Yu-Gi-Oh! Pros are almost the same, and the actual in-dueling part of them is pretty much the same, but some of them have AI dueling, some of them have puzzles, some of them have better matchmaking systems, but they're all different, and there isn't really a clear way to download them. For pretty much all of them, at least to my knowledge, you have to like join a Discord and then find the links. Updating them is a pain often, and that's just a mess. It's a lot easier to just go to duelingbook.com and just jump into a game than it is, I just dropped my headphones, than it is to actually like download Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, keep it updated, all that sort of stuff. I will say that Davinator1212 has a great video about how to download Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. Anytime someone asks me how to download it, I tell them I don't even remember because it was like a year ago now, but Dave has a great video on it, so go check it out if you're interested in downloading that program. And it is good. You don't have to deal with cheaters, but I think in terms of preparing yourself to play the game in real life, it's probably one of the weaker options, especially compared to Dueling Book, simply because you can't really misplay. You can't really cheat, is what I'm trying to say. One thing that in Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro is a bigger issue is that when you misclick, you're totally screwed. There's no way to take it back, where in Dueling Book, if you accidentally misclick something, you can at least take it back, and most of the times your opponent will let you take it back because it happens to everyone. And the one that I don't really want to talk about too much because I think it has the worst characteristics of both of these systems, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro and Dueling Book, is Dueling Nexus. It is an automatic simulator, but it has a lot of the interactions between cards are messed up. Probably more importantly though, unlike Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro and unlike Dueling Book, especially in Dueling Nexus, I find that they take forever to add new cards. I'm pretty sure that at the time of making this video, they don't have any of the danger cards in their system. Whether or not they're not like programming them or they're doing something else with their lives, I'm not entirely sure, but I know that they're really behind on cards. That's like one of the biggest complaints that I've seen about them recently. So that's kind of like the three main online simulators that are out there right now. I mean, I'm counting all the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pros in sort of one category because at the end of the day, they're all fairly similar. It's just like their menus and stuff like that. I will say that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro and the Dueling Nexus deck building features aren't as good as the Dueling Book. They're just not as polished. That part doesn't matter as much, but I know that if I'm trying to build a deck just to get an idea of what it looks like, I always go to Dueling Book before I go to Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro or Dueling Nexus. What are some of the reasons that these are bad, just as like everyone all-encompassing? The biggest issue is they're not making money. When you don't make any money from something, you have to be self-motivating, and for a lot of people, that's extremely difficult, in the same way that when you're doing this sort of free-for-all Yu-Gi-Oh! Website experience, it's really hard to motivate yourself to put in hundreds of cards monthly, new cards, old cards that maybe you put in wrong the first time. It's hard to keep up to date with that for completely free. And I will say on all those platforms, well, I don't know about Dueling Nexus, but I'm pretty sure about Dueling Nexus, you can donate to the creators. That sort of keeps the servers up and it gives money to the creators for their hard work. That's not enough. It simply isn't enough. The issue is that they can't start actually requiring you to pay for the service, because then Konami will take them down. Now, I know someone in the comments is going to say, but Dzeeff, Konami took down Dueling Network without them charging for anything, and that is true. true, but I think that was because, if you guys remember now in retrospect, the time that they took down Dueling Network was right before Duel Links came out, which made it pretty clear that the reason Konami hit Dueling Network, which was hopefully, in their opinion, to push people towards Duel Links. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me because they're two completely different formats, kind of like I talked about at the beginning of this video, but that's at least where Konami was coming from. But the biggest issue with all of these, the reason that they all have really unpolished sections of their websites or of their programs, the reason that it's not cohesive is because they're not making enough money, which makes it really hard to actually motivate them to make it as good as possible. As long as it just works, people are just not going to edit anymore. They're not going to add anything as long as you can. I mean, you can duel on all these platforms for the most part. You can just pick up a deck and duel your opponents. What more can I ask for? Well, I can ask for a good ranked system, which most of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pros lack. At least Dueling Book has a good ranked system. But you can ask for these extra things if you pay more. But these companies, these people, a lot of time, they're not even real companies. The people that are actually running these sites, running these programs, simply can't afford to take this money, because the money that goes into them, as soon as that starts flowing, Konami sues them, or one of the other Yu-Gi-Oh! Owners, because I think that when Dueling Network was taken out, it wasn't actually Konami directly, it was one of the sister companies. But that's kind of like the main issue with them. Is there a solution? Well, the solution, in my opinion, a solution that I think a lot of YouTubers have been talking about, especially on Twitter recently, is that you just make a actual Yu-Gi-Oh! Online, like Konami makes one, and then just charges a monthly fee, like $10 to $20. You have access to all the cards. It's super polished, like Duel Links, because honestly, like, I'm thinking about like Duel Links. I used to make fun of the UI a lot, but I think the actual in-duel features of Duel Links are a lot better than YGOPro or Dueling Book. That's one of the reasons recently why I've been streaming so much Duel Links, is because it's just so much more interesting to play. It's way more polished, and there is an actual rank system, where in YGOPro it's kind of a joke. But that's all really important, but it's like, does Konami have any motivation to do that? Not really. They're making a killing off of Duel Links right now, and one of the issues is that, why would Konami, I mean, you can say like, well, what if Konami just release a game that's kind of like Duel Links, where you have to buy individual packs to open cards? At that point, it's literally just Duel Links. The problem with adding all the cards into the game from Konami's standpoint is that, like, oh, now we're not sort of just grinding people out of their hard-earned money. Like in Duel Links, if you want a deck, you gotta spend $200. Is a little bit much from Konami's perspective, probably as a business, just to say like, oh, you can just have $20 and you can own all 7,000 cards. They're probably not going to do that, but the reason, like, why would they make a second Duel Links that's more modern Yu-Gi-Oh? That just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think they'd be more likely, and I think this is very unlikely, I think they'd be more likely to actually just increase the Duel Link field to 5 zones, make the 8,000 life points, make all those changes, make Duel Links more like the TCG. I think that's a lot more likely than them making a second copy of Duel Links that is using the TCG rules. So I think that where we are right now is pretty much where we're always going to be. I like the addition of competition in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Simulator sort of universe here. When it was just Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, it was a mess, because then they really didn't have to care because they had no competition. But I think Dueling Book existing is a good thing, is sort of so that Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro and Dueling Book are competing for players to get the most people playing on their website or their application or whatever. I think that's good. Competition is good. I just wish Konami would hear the cry of the players and just make a really polished Yu-Gi-Oh! Online for just a monthly fee. I don't think that would be unreasonable. I think they would make money from the players that are not playing the physical card game, but then again, I know that Konami is trying to squeeze as much money as possible out of people, so they're probably not going to move on from Duel Links. Anyway though, hopefully you guys know this discussion. I will see you later. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.